Why a Reform Party victory would not deliver the changes the UK public is expecting. Calls for a political earthquake have grown louder in recent years, with Reform UK presenting itself as the alternative to Labour and the Conservatives. For some, a Reform victory represents the only way to reset a broken system. But the reality is far less simple. Even if Reform were to win power, the institutional and structural barriers within Britain's political and administrative system would make rapid change almost impossible. Without acknowledging these constraints, and without broad cooperation across the political spectrum, the UK risks sliding into paralysis and disillusionment. The structural barriers to change. 1. The civil service. The UK civil service is officially politically neutral, but in practice its culture prioritises continuity. Major reform threatens existing supplier contracts, established departmental structures, and internal power bases. The result is a system that, while not partisan, is structurally conservative. It manages change incrementally, not radically. Ministers, particularly from new parties, often find that their ambitious manifestos get watered down by administrative inertia and legal processes. 2. Parliament's dual hurdles. Even with a Commons majority, governments face significant parliamentary hurdles. A. House of Commons. A new party would need not only a majority of MPs but the ability to maintain unity across every major vote, a daunting prospect for a political newcomer. B. House of Lords. While the Lords cannot veto legislation indefinitely, they can delay bills for up to a year, or 1 month for money bills, through amendments and ping-ponging between Parliament and the House of Lords. For a government promising urgent change, even 1 year is a long time. 3. International and legal constraints. Post-Brexit Britain is no longer bound by EU law in the same way, but international commitments remain. The European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, trade agreements, and UN treaties still shape what is legally defensible. Courts cannot strike down acts of Parliament but can issue declarations of incompatibility and judicial reviews that stall or reshape implementation. Beyond formal law, institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and G7 exert pressure through financial markets, credit ratings, and international diplomacy. A government pursuing policies seen as out of step with the global consensus, such as new fossil fuel plants, risks reputational and financial penalties. 4. Planning and local resistance. Even when political and legal hurdles are cleared, planning law creates further delay. Nationally significant infrastructure projects, NSIP's power plants, reservoirs, and major transport links typically take 3 to 5 years from conception to breaking ground. The statutory examination period is capped at 18 months, but pre-application phases and legal challenges often extend this to much longer. Hospitals and schools, large health infrastructure projects average 7 to 10 years from outline business case to completion. Housing, major developments of 100-plus homes typically take 2 to 5 years from planning application to delivery, depending on objections. This reality means even flagship priority projects may not deliver visible results within a single 5-year parliamentary term. The scale of the challenges. Population growth. The UK's population has grown by around 10 to 11 million people since the early 1990s, an increase of nearly 20%. At around 68 million, Britain is now close in population to France despite being less than half its size geographically. Housing. Contrary to some claims, the UK has built more than 2.8 million homes since the 1990s, but still far fewer than required. England alone has added about 4.5 million net dwellings since 2001, yet affordability has worsened because demand far outpaces supply. With an extra 11 million people, the housing shortage is one of the country's most acute structural problems. Healthcare. New hospitals have been built: the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Birmingham, 2010, Royal Liverpool, 2022, and Midland Metropolitan, 2024 are among them, but most replaced outdated facilities rather than adding net new capacity. The NHS backlog for major repairs and new builds is now estimated at £13.8 billion, while patient demand has risen dramatically. The mismatch between population growth and new hospital provision is stark. Water infrastructure. Average UK daily water use is 142 litres per person. The additional 11 million people since 1992 require about 1.56 billion litres per day extra. The new Havant Thicket Reservoir, with a capacity of 8.7 billion litres, covers less than a week of that new demand. With only one major reservoir under construction and two more just entering planning, water resilience is dangerously thin. Energy. Calls for new gas-fired power stations run headlong into net zero legislation and international climate agreements. Even if politically authorized, financing them would be difficult given pressure from markets and multilateral lenders. Renewable capacity is growing, but grid connections and planning delays slow deployment. Debt and fiscal limits. The UK's public debt stood at £2.7 trillion in June 2025, 97.8% of GDP, with the tax burden at historic highs. Any new government would inherit tight fiscal handcuffs, borrowing costs are higher, and markets demand credibility. Reform, as an untested party, would face particular scrutiny from lenders. Why Reform would struggle? For Reform UK to make progress on its agenda, it would have to 1. Win a historic majority under a first-past-the-post system that punishes outsiders. 2. Overcome civil service inertia with little governing experience. 3. Navigate Parliament and courts faster than established parties, despite weaker institutional roots. 4. Secure financing for infrastructure despite markets perceiving it as high risk. Even a determined new government would find that 5 years is too short to deliver tangible results, leaving voters disillusioned. Avoiding the dark path. The greatest danger is not simply that Reform or another outsider fails to deliver. It is that voters conclude no government can deliver, eroding faith in democratic institutions. This is already visible on social media, where talk of unrest and collapse circulates widely. Yet Britain is not condemned to this trajectory. There are solutions, but they require courage and cooperation across traditional party lines. What needs cross-party consensus? 1. Immigration, establishing sustainable levels of legal migration, a functional asylum system, and genuine control of illegal entry. 2. Law and order, investing in policing, courts, and prisons to restore public confidence in enforcement. 3. Housing and infrastructure, agreeing long-term targets for housing delivery, major water schemes, and energy resilience, insulated from electoral cycles. 4. Reform of ECHR interaction. The UK does not necessarily need to leave the ECHR, but it must clarify its relationship with Strasbourg to avoid paralysis over deportations and security issues. If these core areas can be removed from partisan point scoring and addressed through a national policy framework, then progress becomes possible. On other issues, parties can and will disagree, that is democracy. But without agreement on these foundations, the entire system risks paralysis. Conclusion. A Reform UK victory would not automatically deliver change because the British state is designed for continuity, not disruption. Structural inertia, international obligations, planning law, and fiscal constraints all conspire to slow even the most ambitious government. But the answer is not to abandon democracy or pin false hopes on outsider parties. The answer is to build a new political culture of shared responsibility on the nation's most urgent issues. Immigration, law and order, housing, infrastructure, and international legal reform must be addressed collectively. If Britain's political class cannot rise to this challenge, the risk is not just slow progress, it is the collapse of public trust in the system itself. That is a path no party should want to tread.